Good afternoon and most welcome to 978 of the Heidegger series. I will continue now with this lovely article from Melis Ergin, Derrida's Autobiographies. The autobiographical tradition has been informed by a similar scope of self-reflexivity and self-certitude as found in the philosophical tradition. Historically, autobiography as self-life writing has been perceived as a genre that grants the author the right to affirm a unique identity as his property. Derrida reveals, from this perspective, fissures inherent in an understanding of epistemological solitude by foregrounding both the impossibility of disentangling the self from the world and the desire for such an idealistic moment of self-closure. He casts a skeptical eye on the obscure relationship among self, life and writing, and perceives writing as a playful practice that can radically transform the way we think of selfhood and autonomy. The first point Derrida scrutinizes is the fantasy of the proper in self-relation. As he notes in points, there is, quote from Derrida, there is naturally a desire for whoever speaks or writes to sign an idiomatic, that is, irreplaceable manner. But as soon as there is a mark, that is the possibility of a repetition, as soon as there is language, generality has entered the scene and the idiom compromises with something that is not idiomatic, with a common language, concept, laws and general norms. Quote from Derrida. Disturbing the dream of singularity. Derrida notes that the autobiographical subject is already compromised and loses some of its uniqueness the moment it begins to write. The autobiographical signature thus embodies the tension between singularity and idiosyncrasy on the one hand, and generality and repeatability on the other. The iterability of the signature carries in its very inscription the trace of the absence of its author, whose future disappearance will not, in principle, hinder the mark produced by writing in its functioning. End of quote. And from offering itself to be reinterpreted by others. And autobiography is thus aligned with a kind of écriture that simultaneously inherits and disinherits the writing subject. As soon as the writer inscribes I, it is a part of we. Hence the taxonomic certainties of the I are suspended in a recit where I/we are, where I summon us, citation mark, où je, nous sommes. The entanglements begin here with a very challenge set against the idea of the single, indivisible subject. Autobiography entails an irresolvable tension between singularity and generality. A recognition of this tension is important in understanding the differencing force of time introduced into the body of the autobiographical text, whose closure is postponed by an implicit delay. For Derrida, the testamentary structure in autobiography is informed by a division called into play by the iterability of writing, where even the most idiomatic signature is redefined by way of its dependency on the infinite return of another. Incredibly interesting. It's about this tension between singularity and generality that caught my attention here. It's actually incredibly interesting. And I think a hint could be here, I'm not sure, but the subject, is that really something of a singularity or is it a generality? And this question, I think, needs to be taken very, very seriously. There is an assumption already going on about the subject, what it is, and it becomes more complex with this understanding. I'm going to repeat this. A recognition of this tension is important in understanding the differencing force of time introduced into the body of the autobiographical text, whose closure is postponed by an implicit delay. Think about the idea of originality when we look into the mirror. There's actually a time delay there. This does not happen instantaneous. Even though the time delay is very short, and I think we said a couple of episodes ago that, lectures ago, that we as human beings have a very hard time perceiving that time delay, because vision, I think everything within the span of 30 milliseconds is simultaneous, something of that vicinity. Do you remember?
No, but I thought that you referred before repeating this whether I, the subject, am autonomous or part of we. I think the issue was
yes,
that.
That's the issue. Yes, exactly.
But what has that to do with the mirror? Yeah.
One take on the mirror is that you look into the mirror and you think it's only one.
Yes.
And it's a way of explaining, if you look into the mirror you have a conception, and I call that conception one, but the one comes later.
Yes, of course. Yes. Yes.
It is very interesting.
Yes, finally now it clicks in. So yes.
For me as well. So we are two here.
Yeah, finally. Yes. So, but the mirror image has also an advantage, namely that we are now two.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So one is always at least two.
Yeah.
So French people, when they speak in academic paper, they usually use a nu, vi, while in the West, English speaking papers, you rarely see we.
Yeah.
But the French way of speaking is perhaps more correct in a way. Nu, it's always we.
For Derrida, the testamentary structure in autobiography is informed by a division called interplay by the iterability of writing, where even the most idiomatic signature is redefined by way of its dependency on the infinite return of another. Seen in this light, the autobiographical does not overlap the auto-analytical without limit. Next, it demands a reconsideration of the entire topos of the aftos. This is coming from the postcard in Derrida. Hence, Derrida shifts the focus from auto to auto, combining forms of ous, which means ear in Greek, and remarks that it is the ear of the other that signs. The ear of the other says me to me and constitutes the autos or autos of my autobiographies. The autobiographical signature thus becomes effective not at the moment it takes place, but only when the message is received by other ears. And I have to note that there's a time delay when I speak and you hear what I say. And that time delay is contrasted how Kalle sent out the signal from his ear to meet my voice. The receiving ear may be perceived both as the ear of the other or the ear of the autobiographical subject, who seals, or in phenomenological terms, affects itself in the completion of a circuit between voice and hearing, mouth and ear. Derrida places critical attention on structural alterity and asserts that the signature is left to the initiative, to the responsibility, to the discretion of the other. One will sign if one signs at the moment of the arrival at destination, not at the origin. Very important. By shifting his focus from the origin of the signature to its moment of arrival to other ears, Derrida notes that self-coincidence is deferred like in deference, inexhaustibly, leaving only a trace of the subject writing with a desire without horizon. Self-actualization remains an interminable project for autobiographer, left to the discretion of the other in a state of endlessly unfulfilled desire. This is also the striving of the presence, of the existence. So good. Where auto-affection constitutes the same auto as it divides the same, end of quote. This is from Grammatology. Every autobiography is an autobiographical interplay between self and other, mouth and ear. An understanding of self-actualization as a continuous process calls into question traditional autobiographies focus on a narrative of a finite life. In contrast to the traditional autobiographer, who aims to transform the course of life into an eternal present, that is, fix becoming as being or posit life as truth. Derrida perceives autobiography as a practice aligned with writing in difference. The not here and not now. Constantly different, constantly differing. Therefore, not here and not now. And in Spectres of Marx, Kelly read recently, he turns from an ontological toward a hauntological understanding of writing as the name of the structure always, already inhabited by the trace. Simultaneously gazing to both past and future, Derrida locates the autobiographer in a temporal entanglement that suspends the borders between life and death. In the book Derrida and Autobiography, Smith notes, the attempt at autobiography, the redoubled but doubly failed attempt to seize the name and be there as oneself, entails a deeper involvement with one's own death. An autobiography, then, more nearly resembles a autothanatography. Quote, if life does not go without death, and that death is not beyond, outside of life. This is coming from Spectres of Marx. Thanato means death in Greek, if I don't remember wrong. Then every time I begin to write the life of myself, death interposes. Every autobiography is an allegory of the writer's death. An autobiothanatography, as the death-bearing name released throughout writing makes it impossible to capture the history of an empirical life in a complete and self-referential narrative. Autobiography can no longer reduce the life term to a coextension of meaning with history. Each time I writes, the signature of that I becomes the bearer of both the survival and the death of the autobiographer, gathering language not in its identity or its unity, but in the uniqueness or singularity of a gathering together of its difference to itself. To capture this force of self-differentiation, Derrida shifts the autobiographical voice from the first person singular to the second person singular. Ergo es. Descartes' infamous phrase, cogito ergo sum is likely bent to accentuate the fact that any form of self-knowledge depends on the infinite return of the other. Derrida's purpose in highlighting structural alterity is to draw our attention to the space of relation between self and other that is always already there, prior to any ethical decision. He does not speak of hospitality toward the other as a matter of choice. For expressions such as the openness to the other are worn together to give up the ghost. What he demonstrates is that all forms of identity are autoimmune, in that they never completely close in on themselves. Even in a singular event, such a confession, one always confesses to the other. There is in this division the divisibility of the confession which structured the confession, so that I never confess myself. If confession is guided by a teleology, it is not confession, it is just economy, it's a therapy. And that is very interesting, because if we're stranded in this whole, which is self-identity in the lesser way, we cannot be honest, neither can we be reflective. Reflection becomes an impossibility in the self-identity. If I'm completely identical to myself, how could I look at myself? For every thought I have belongs to my I. It's impossible for me to be reflective. So reflection in itself seems to go against some logic, and that logic is already by perception. And it's this very thing that Derrida draws out from the closet, out from the obscurity of darkness inside, and shows that there is actually another take on this that is much more grateful, honest, and plentiful. And all of a sudden, reflection becomes not only a possibility, but an advantage of constantly present. So I can reflect on my own thinking, on my own being, at the same time as I am who I am. And this is, I think most philosophers be struggling with this and not come to a good conclusion. One other way of going about is being completely dishonest, as Hume was. I would say now he was completely dishonest. This is the way.
I thought that one keyword in this paper is possibly destination.
Teleology, yeah.
Yes, but destination in different ways. It has different time lags, so to say.
Yes.
Okay, when I look at myself in the mirror, okay, there is always a delay. But also when you listen to me, there is always a delay.
Yeah.
It has only a meaning when it arrives to you. So you are the destination of my voice.
Yes.
And so forth.
You have an intention when you speak to me, and that intention is captured by me, so to speak. And you can say, sometimes, looking at it very bluntly, you can say, your words have specific meaning hidden inside of the words. If you're an analytic philosopher, you might say that, I don't know. But there is also a direction going from me to you. And that is the teleology. And it could be that words are not necessary. I start thinking this sing-along language theory, that language started as singing. Because in singing, it's almost only directedness, because you don't sing like just for no one, you sing towards somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not hard to understand. Let's just build us a scenario. If the Neolithic man came home to his cabin or wherever he dwelled, the cave, and start singing or hymning, it would be clearly directed, and in the directedness that would make complete sense without words. And I would say the sing-along story, it's so good, it's very hard to not accept. We know singing and language are much closer related than we thought only 10 years ago. And the singing voice, the tonality, is very, very important. Even more important than the words itself. And there is a sort of singing in the text as well, I would say. There is a teleology here as well. Although it gets signed by the eyes to some extent. But I think the ears are still there, even if we read. It's a good time to end here. Thank you very much. Thank you for the text.
Thank you.